Okay, so today we're going to be making this huge or gigantic twist and pop-up panel card, and we're going to build it the exact same way that we've built the other twist and pop-up panel cards, but the paper sizes we're using, of course, are much larger. You will need 3 pieces of 12 by 24 inch paper if you want to build this card, and so it simply opens up the same exact way. And then it closes, of course, the same exact way. Now, the one thing that I do recommend is that you plan to add layers for your designer paper. So in this case, I have this first layer right here, the pink, and then I have the lips layer on top, and then I added some additional panels as far as for embellishment, but I definitely recommend that you add at least 2 panels or 2 layers of design paper so that you can stabilize your card. The 12 by 24 paper that I got is from Cricut, and I bought it on Amazon, but it's not super thick. It's a good thickness, and maybe it's not a good weight. It will feel a little flimsy because you've added your mechanism, so that's why I say you should definitely layer. And I also did it here on the inside, both on the top and on the bottom, and then I did it on the back as well. So make sure that you plan to add double layers at least so that you can give your card a little bit more stability. Okay, so normally at this point I would already have all of my pieces cut, but because the paper was so large, I wanted to show you how I cut and scored my paper, and this is my way. If you want to do it a different way, you definitely can. I'm not super great with an X-Acto knife, or making sure that I make sure my ruler is completely straight. So I still used my scoreboard, and I also used my my cutting board. So that's how I'm gonna show you how to make the cuts for the 12 by 24 inch paper. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, I didn't completely decorate this one yet. One of my VIP members actually needed this tutorial so that she could make a card, and I definitely wanted to get her the tutorial. So I will do a project share. I'm going to be making 4 of these to mail out to my nieces and nephews. So as soon as I've done, when I've embellished them and everything, I will do a project share so you can see how I embellished mine. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with the paper. Okay, so I have here my 3 sheets of 12 by 24 inch paper. The first one that you're going to use, the first sheet that you have, you are merely going to fold it in half. You can definitely score if you'd like, but you're basically going to fold it in half, and this will be your card base. If you want to score, just go ahead and take your scoring tool, line it up, take your stylus, and then just score at the 12 inch mark. But like I said, if you want to just fold it in half and then burnish it down that way, you definitely can. This is probably the easiest one of all 3 of the sheets. And then fold it over, and then just make sure that you burnish. Okay, so this is your card base. You can set this one aside for right now. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and cut these other 2 sheets of 12 by 24 inch paper. So the first one you're going to need to cut at 9 and 24 inches. So this is 24 inches, and this is the 9 inch side. This is the 12 inch side, I'm sorry. So this is the side that we actually need. We need to cut this. This is the 24 inch, this is the 12 inch side. So if you were to stick your paper in, and let's say you were going to go to the 9 inch here and cut, then you would actually be creating a 9 inch by 12 inch piece, which is what you don't want. So you're actually going to have to cut it this way, because I want the 24 inch length, but I need it to be 9 inches instead of 12 inches across. So this is what I did to mine. I gently folded it in half, and then all I'm going to do And this did not affect my mechanism in any way. So if you're worried about it affecting your mechanism, it won't. I just gently kind of folded it. And now what I'm going to do, make sure it's completely lined up on your sides. Make sure that everything is lined up. And so all I did was I kind of gently pushed it through the bottom to the 9-inch mark. Over here, I lined up this side on the 9-inch mark. And then, like I said, make sure it's completely lined up. This side is on 9 inches. And then all I did was cut. Okay, that's it. And so here mine kind of stayed a little bit, so I'm just going to take my scissors and cut that straight off, okay? So now I have my 9-inch by 24-inch piece that I need, okay? Let me just trim this little tiny piece off right here. Okay, so there's your second piece. So before we start scoring that piece, we're going to go ahead and do the last piece. This is your last piece, and this piece needs to be at 8 by 20 inches. So the first part is not too terrible. It needs to be at 20 inches. Right now it is at 24 inches. So for me, I knew all I had to do was cut off 4 inches on this one. So I'm going to slide it all the way over, and I'm going to cut 4 inches. This is the piece I don't need. And now I know this piece is now 20 inches instead of 24 inches. But I have to make the 12-inch side, this side, I have to make it 8 inches. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm just going to fold it in half. I'm not going to burnish or anything down here at the bottom. I'm gently going to fold it. And I'm going to make sure that my corners are lined up. And then I'm just going to kind of guide it through right here so that I can cut at 8 inches. Now again, this is the way that I did it because it was just so much easier for me to use my scoring board and to use my cutter, because I am not super great with a measuring tape and ruler and X-Acto knife. So now all I'm going to do is just guide it through. I'm not going to forcefully push down here because I don't want it to make that hard line, but I am just gonna not stuff it, but kind of gently push it through. I'm gonna make sure that I line right up on the 8, and I'm gonna make sure that when I put this little guide down, that if it pushes it over, that I stay right there on the 8, okay? And then I just cut. And this kind of did the same thing. It left me a little spot that didn't want to cut. I'm just going to take my scissors and chop it right off. Okay? So now I have my 8 by 20 inch paper. This is actually your mechanism. Your 9 by 24 inch is actually your panel piece. So we already have our base folded. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and work on our panel piece. So you're going to need your scoring board and your scoring tool. And so for this one, you need to score your 9 by 24 inch piece. You need to score it at 6, 12, and 18 inches. So you're going to start by scoring at 6. Then you're going to score at 12, and if you'll see, that's kind of where my little hump is, but not quite. But it's not scored down, or it's not, my line is not really apparent, so I'm going to be okay when it comes to my mechanism. So I'm doing 6 and 12. And I'm just going to double score because I want to make sure that everything goes up, or that everything lines up. Okay, so I did my 6-inch mark and I did my 12-inch mark. Now I need to score at 18 inches, but my scoring board only goes to 12 1/4. So I can't come over here and score without my scoring board. Now here again, you could take a measuring tape or a ruler and measure 6 more inches to 18 and score it that way. But all I did was rotate it around and score at 6 inches. That's all I did. So I didn't have to worry about using my measuring tape and then trying to score at 18 inches. I just rotated it around and scored at 6. So again, with my 9 and 24-inch piece, I started by scoring at 6 and 12. And then since I don't have 18 over here, I just rotated it over and I scored at 6 right here. And so this gives me my panel piece. So we're going to fold it exactly the same way that we folded our panel pieces in the past. This side is going to be a valley. Then you're going to do your mountain fold. And then this side will be your valley folds. And if for some reason something's a little off, you can just kind of fix it right now when you're burnishing. So if, let's say it's just a little bit, if it needs to be moved up a little or whatever it may be, okay? So there's your panel piece, okay? So now we are going to have a little piece of the glue from when it was connected to the paper pad right there. Let me just take that off really quickly. Okay, so now that we have our panel piece done, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to work on our mechanism. So your mechanism piece is your 8 by 20-inch piece. And you're going to start by scoring at 4 inches on the 8-inch side. So we're going to score basically in half on the 8-inch side. So if you wanted to, you could just fold it over, because if you folded it over right in half, that would be 4 inches. Otherwise, you can take your scoring board, just line it up, and score as far down as you can possibly go on the 4-inch line. Okay, don't worry about going below. Just score all the way down as far as you can. And then we're just going to rotate it over and score on the 4-inch side on this side. Okay? Okay, and so now we're going to make our marks, and so you need your pencil or your pen or however you want to make your marks, and your marks are going to go on the 20-inch side. So the first thing you want to do is you're going to make your mark at 6 and 14 inches. So I'm going to start by making my first mark at 6, and then I'm just going to rotate over and make my second mark at 6. So those are both at 6 inches and 6 inches. But my 14-inch mark, again, my scoreboard only goes to 12 inches. So if you wanted to get a ruler and measure to the last 2 inches, you definitely could. But what you could do, and this is what I did, was I flipped over my paper and I made another mark at 6 inches, and then I rotated it around and made another mark at 6 inches. So I have 4 marks, but 2 on each side, right? And of course I need all 4 of my marks on the same side. So this is what I did that worked for me. If you want to use a ruler, if you want to use a measuring tape to get your marks, you definitely can. All I did though was on the marks that I put on the back, I just looked from the back to the front and I drew my little mark right there. Now I know that's not perfectly precise, but that's what I did. And it seemed to work pretty well. I did the same thing on this side over here. Here's my back mark. I just kind of looked at it. And I can see the little indentation on this side from when I drew the mark on my scoreboard. So when I made my 6 mark here, it kind of made an indentation on the paper. So it would be easy for me to mark it on the other side. So now I have all 4 of my marks. So let me just kind of repeat what I did. So I took my 8 by 20 inch paper, and I have to make marks at 6 and at 14. So I started by making my first mark at 6. I skipped the 14 inch mark. I just rotated it over and made my second mark at 6. Now, because I can't score at 14 over here, and I didn't want to use a ruler and, you know, all that kind of crazy stuff for me. If that works better for you, you can. All I did was flip it over. I made a mark at 6 inches here. Then I rotated it. I made another mark at 6 inches. But then it gave me 2 marks on the back and 2 marks on the front. And you know we need all 4 marks on the same time, on the same side. So all I did was I looked at this little mark here, and I drew it right here on the front. Then I rotated it around. I looked at this mark right here, and then I drew it on the front. And that gave me all 4 of my marks. And that's what worked best for me. But you do whatever works best for you. So now all we're going to do is we're going to do the exact same thing that we did last time. You're going to line up your marks, and I have my 4 score line highlighted in blue. So that's how it's easy for me to line up my marks. But I'm just going to line up both of my marks, and I'm going to create my X. And then rotate it to the other side, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. Line up my marks, and then make my diagonal X. Or make my diagonal line for my X. Oops. Oops. Okay, so now I have my panel piece. My mechanism. So we're going to do the exact same thing we've done before. We're going to fold it in half, burnish, and then you're going to go to the opposite side. So we folded it in half this way. So then you're going to go to the opposite side, and you're going to fold on your diagonal lines. Okay? Do one, oops, and then do the other. The exact same thing that we've done in the past. And then you just take your paper, and now you're going to make your little mechanism. And it's a little bit harder because the paper is a little bit bigger. So I just tried to do one side at a time, and that seemed to work well for me. Okay? And so here's my little house. And I had to make sure I burnished to keep everything in line. Okay. So now you're going to attach your mechanism the exact same way that we've attached the mechanism in the past to your base. You're going to take your base, and you're going to attach your mechanism in the center. Now we know that this is a 12-inch card, 12 inches across. So our center this time is going to be at 6 inches. So I'm going to make my mark at 6 inches. And this is where I'm going to put the little point of my house, right here. Now, I did get feedback from a YouTube subscriber, and I'm pretty sure somebody in the group said this also, that if you cut off the point, that it would take away some bulk. I haven't tried that yet, so I can't give you any feedback on it, but that's what I heard, is that if you cut the point off, that it takes away some of the bulk. Completely up to you if you want to try it. If you do, feel free to leave some comments below so that everybody can see kind of how it worked out. I kind of like the little point so that it helps guide me, but it may be easier to cut off the point. But we're going to go ahead and do this the same exact way that we've done in the past, because I think I've already given you so many different ways to cut 24-inch paper at this point. So go ahead and just add your tape on both sides just like we normally would, and then we'll go ahead and get our mechanism attached, and then we'll attach our panels. Okay, so I've attached my score tape to both sides, and I'm going to go ahead and, this is my preferred way of doing it, is I just line up my point right on my mark, and then I'm going to take my score tape off. And make sure before you take off the backing of your score tape that you burnished your score tape, because you want to make sure you have a really good stick. And then I like to just fold this top piece over. For me, that just seems to be the easiest way. And then I'm just going to burnish on my little house. And then I'm going to flip it over, open it back up, and take off my score tape on this side. I really like the size of this gigantic or huge twist pop-up panel, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes I have those 12 by 12 inch pieces of designer cardstock that I don't want to cut up because I just think they're so awesome just as a 12 by 12. And this is a perfect way for me to use those pieces because I only have to cut off 1/4 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch to make it 11 3/4 by 11 3/4. And so I really like this big card. Okay, so I've attached my mechanism, and here you can see you can open it and close it. Now when you get to this point, you're going to start to feel, oh, my paper kind of feels a little flimsy. And that's exactly why you're going to need to at least double layer it. If you want to triple layer it, if you want to add the additional panels like I did on the front, you can definitely do that. But again, my suggestion is you double layer the top, you double layer both of the insides, and you double layer the back as well so that you can give your card some sturdiness. You could probably also make this card out of poster board. I have found that poster board is not as forgiving when I try to stuff it underneath my my cutting board, so that doesn't necessarily work so great for me. But if you want to do it that way, again, completely whatever works best for you. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get our panels attached. So we're going to do the same thing that we've done in the past with our pop-up panels. We're going to measure to the center, which we know is 6 inches, and we're going to make a little mark. And then you're going to take your panel piece and you're going to kind of fold it like a gatefold and line this score line up with your little mark. And then you're going to do your straight line on this side, and then this is where you're going to add your score tape. Draw your line on this side, and then this is where you're going to add your score tape. So go ahead and add your score tape, and then we'll go ahead and get it attached. Okay, so now I've added my score tape to both sides, and I made sure not to go over the line that I made. And so now we're just going to go ahead and get our panels attached. Make sure you reline up this little center point with your little mark, and your line should completely match on both sides already. And so now just make sure you take off your tape on both sides and adhere your panel piece. So just like the last time after we adhered our panel piece, we had to kind of help the mechanism work the first couple of times. You're going to have to do the same exact thing on this card, and it's going to feel a little bit more stubborn because it's so large and because your bottom and your top of your card are going to feel a little unstable because they've got the weight of the mechanism on them. And that's why when you add double layers of the designer series paper or the designer cardstock that you use, it'll give them that strength so that it can hold the mechanism well. So just keep that in mind as you finished taking off the backing of your score tape, that the first time you do when you try to open and close it right now, or when you try to close it, that you're really going to have to help the mechanism the first time. And then once you add your designer paper, your designer cardstock, it'll get so much easier. Okay? So now I'm going to fold it, but I'm going to help my mechanism by pushing in this side and also by pushing in this side over here. Okay? So I'm just going to kind of help it close for the first time. You see when I say, when I'm talking about that it's going to be just a little bit difficult the first time. There we go. Okay, so what I did was, I'm going to show you again. Remember, you have these little flaps on the side that are angles. This is the side of the house that I helped push in on both sides. I pushed both sides in at the same time to help my mechanism get started. And then now you're just going to want to burnish like you've done in the past. Burnish, 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 to kind of get your mechanism used to being in this spot again. And then flip it over and burnish, burnish, burnish again. Okay? And so now you have your panel piece. And again, your top and your bottom, they're going to feel a little bit flimsy, and you're going to struggle a little bit getting your mechanism closed because you don't have the sturdiness and you have this heavy centerpiece. So once you add your designer cardstock, it will not feel that way anymore.